now that we are more comfortable with the slope-intercept form of a line, y equals mx plus b, we're pretty good at pulling out the m, our slope, and pulling out the b, our y-intercept. Y equals mx plus b is a very, very common form of a line, and therefore we use it a lot in Algebra 1. Well, once we become really good at taking out the slope, or sometimes referred to as the average rate of change, and taking out the b, the y-intercept, the exact place the line intersects the y-axis, our next challenge is what do we do when we're given lines that are in forms that are not the slope-intercept form, that it's not so easy just to pull out the m and the b? Well, in these cases, we need to be able to solve for y first and put it into the form of y equals mx plus b, to put it into the slope-intercept form. Then it would become very easy just to take out our m and our b. Solving for y is one of the keys to discovering your slope m and y-intercept b. All right, let's take a look at some examples here. Our first example is the equation 2x plus 3y equals 12. All right, I need to find my slope, my m, and I need to find my y-intercept b. So I'm going to try to put this into the form y equals mx plus b. I'm going to use the same skills I used to solve equations to solve for y. I'm going to put a little line here like I like to do, a wall right at the equal sign to separate the two sides of the equation. And if my goal is to get this little y right here all by itself on the left side of the equation, the first thing I'm going to do is to take any other letters or expressions on this side and throw it to the other side of the equation, remembering the golden rule. If it switches sides, it's also going to switch its sign. So my 3y is just going to come down. It's going to stay here, so it's going to keep that positive sign. But this positive 2x is going to go to the other side of the equation. I'm going to put it in the front because I like to keep my x's in front. And that positive 2x is going to become a negative 2x. And this positive 12 is going to stay on the right side, so it's going to stay positive. Okay, great. That was step one. However, we're not finished until our equation starts with y equals. And here I have 3y equals. Well, that 3, which is touching the y, is multiplying when a letter touches a number, right? When a variable touches a number. So I'm going to use the opposite force of multiplication, which is division. I'm going to divide this side by 3. But if I divide this side of the equation by 3, I also got to divide every part on the other side by 3 as well. Well, I'm going to go from left to right here. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so it cancels out, and I have my y equals. Now here I have negative 2 divided by 3. Now, the more of these you do, you're probably going to be able to do it pretty quickly without your calculator. I just want to show you something about when we divide negative 2 divided by 3. And if I put negative 2 divided by 3 in my calculator, which you can always do, you can end up with this long repeating decimal, negative 0.666666667, right? Well, usually in linear algebra, we prefer fractions over decimals. Well, the cool thing about your calculator is that you can go right to the math part of your calculator, hit it, and that very first number here says change it back to a fraction. So I'm going to just hit enter because it's already there. And then I'm going to hit enter again. Oh, and it says negative 2/3. You see that? I didn't have to change it. It was already simplified. So I'm just going to bring down my negative 2/3 x. And then we get to this part over here where it's positive 12 divided by 3. Well, if you can't do that in your head, which you should be able to, but if you can't, no big deal. We can just go to calculator and say 12 divided by 3. Enter. Oh, yeah, of course, it's 4. It's positive 4. And I'm going to put that sign down there. It's positive 4. And what we have just accomplished is convert that line into the slope-intercept form. And once we have it in the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, we know exactly where to find our slope, the number, the coefficient of our x, and the constant, the number that's just hanging out here at the end, is going to be our b. So we could see that our slope, our m, is negative 2/3, and that our y-intercept is going to be positive 4. And there you have it. Here, why don't you pause your screen and try the other 3 examples. Okay, so let's give it a shot here. Let's go here to the right, number 2. Well, there's my equal sign. So I'm going to drop down my little wall here. And the first thing that I'm going to do is bring the x's. Well, here you notice that it's 2y minus x equals 6. Well, here's the x on this side. Well, it doesn't really matter which side it's on. If the y comes first or the x comes first, my x has to go to the other side. And it's a negative x on this side. So when it switches to the other side, when it jumps the wall, it's going to change to a positive x. So my 2y stays right there. And then that x is going to be a positive x, which means I don't really need to write a sign there. But that 6 is going to come down, and that is positive. So I'm going to write plus 6. Now, once again, we are not finished putting it into the slope-intercept form until we get a 1y. Well, I have a 2y. That 2 is multiplying, so I'm going to divide. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. Well, the 2 over 2 is going to cancel out because it's equal to 1. So I have 1y, that was my goal, is equal to x over 2. Well, here's a case where you need to remember that in front of any variable that does not have a coefficient, there actually is a number there. It's just the number 1. So when we actually bring this down, we need to remember that x over 2 is really the same as 1x over 2, which is the same as 1/2 x. And then we get to the positive 6 divided by 2, which is positive 3. Well, we've succeeded in putting this into slope-intercept form. So I could see that the coefficient of my x is 1/2. That's my slope. It's positive. I should also put that in there. And that my y-intercept is positive 3. All right, let's try the third example. Well, here's a case where all the numbers are on the same side as the equation and it's equal to 0. Well, this is no different than the others. We're just going to get everything over to the right side except 1y. So I'm going to do 2 things at once here. Watch this. Here's my number that's attached to the y, right? My negative 6y. So I'm going to keep that on this side. I'm going to keep that here because that's the last thing I'm going to do. Separate those 2. And then the other side, my positive 4x jumps to the other side, and my positive 12 is going to jump to the other side. So my positive 4x is going to become negative 4x, right? Changes sides, changes signs. And my positive 12 is going to become a negative 12 on the other side. All right. Now our last step is to get that y all by itself. Well, it has a negative 6 that's multiplying, so I'm going to divide it by negative 6. And I'm going to divide everything over here also by negative 6, and this by negative 6. That's going to cancel out because it's equal to 1. I get my y equals. That was my goal. And now I am going to use my calculator because this is going to be a little tricky. We don't want to make a mistake here. So I'm going to clear this out. And the first thing I want to simplify or check out is this negative 4 divided by negative 6. So I'm going to put that in the calculator. Negative 4 divided by negative 6. I'm going to hit enter. Oh, again, I get a long repeating decimal, 0.6666666. The more you see this, you might get used to knowing what that actually is. But we're going to go to our math button. We're going to change it back to a fraction, hit enter 2 times, once, twice. Oh, that's a positive 2/3. Notice how a negative on top, the numerator, and a negative on the bottom, when you divide a negative and a negative, it becomes positive. So this is actually a positive 2/3 x. Now, the same here with my y-intercept. I have a negative 12 divided by negative 6. Well, a negative divided by a negative is going to be positive, and we all should know that 12 divided by 6 is 2. Well, here's my line in slope-intercept form, which means my slope, or my m, is going to be positive 2/3, and my y-intercept is going to be positive 2. And for our last example, 3y plus 5x equals negative 8. All right, so once again, I'm going to put my little wall here. I'm going to take my positive 5x and throw it to the other side, and I end up with a 3y, stays over here, and I get negative 5x, and my negative 8 stays on that side, so it stays negative. And then finally, I'm going to divide by positive 3 here, which means I have to divide everything by positive 3. And that cancels, and I get y is equal to. Now here, even if you know what these are, it's always helpful just to throw them in your calculator just to be doubly sure. So I'm going to take my negative 5 and divide it by 3 and see if I know what that is, what that simplifies to. Well, again, I get a decimal. So whenever I get a decimal, I like to go to do my math enter trick, which automatically will simplify to a fraction. Oh, it's negative 5 over 3. Oh, it didn't even change. It stayed the same. It already was simplified. Negative 5 over 3x. And I'm going to do the same here with my 8 over 3. Right? So here I have a negative 8 divided by 3. I'm going to do enter here, and I can see that that's negative 2.666 repeating, right? So I'm going to go math and enter twice. Oh, and that also was simplified. That's just going to be minus 8 over 3. And that is in slope intercept form. So we can now take out our slope, the coefficient of our x, which is going to be negative 5/3. And our y-intercept is going to be negative 8/3. And there you have it, converting lines into slope-intercept form.